Alright, so I've created a blank canvas here. I do have a background of a photo, so we'll work with that later to show how certain effects can be implemented on top of an image. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put my text into the canvas here. I'm going to call that skate park because that's what my background is. And I'm going to highlight this text before I apply it and put in color. Reverse that. I'd like it to be white. So you see how I just did that. Make sure all the text is highlighted, and I just reversed the colors here. What's on the foreground and what's in the background, and what that is doing is changing what's the stroke color is versus what the fill color is. So once I'm happy with that, I can hit enter. I can hit apply, and sometimes you want to be precise with your text, so you can go up here and select the pick tool, and you can center the text, either completely center it, or if you want it at the top kind of but you're not getting it quite center, you can bring it to the top and then select align horizontally. Or if you want it kind of to the side but you want it in the middle, you can align it vertically as well. Alright, so for our purposes, I'm just going to put it directly in the center. Okay, so one thing, when you create text, it's going to be put into a vector layer. And I say into a vector layer because inside your vector layer you have the actual text layer. For instance, if I add another shape, you will see that it goes into that vector layer as a new object inside the vector layer. And the only reason that happened is because I created it while I was still in a vector layer. So for instance, if I click on this raster layer and draw another object, it will create a whole new vector layer. So now I'll have vector layer 2, right? So each vector layer is its own layer, and if you apply global effects to a vector layer, it only applies to that vector layer. For instance, if we still had vector group or vector layer 2, it wouldn't be applied to that layer if we're only making changes in vector 1. So inside the vector layer, we can right click it and go to properties and go to layer styles, and we can apply various effects to the objects inside that layer. So by selecting a bevel or embossing, you'll see, and I'll hit the preview here, you can see it on the screen here, you can see it added a bit of a bevel and embossed it. And I could also add drop shadows, an inner glow, or better yet, on the black canvas, let's do an outer glow, so you can kind of see what it's doing to every object inside that layer. Okay, so that's a bit extreme. So just like if I were to lower the size, you'll see it's kind of just going to give it kind of a halo around it of light. Lower the opacity, so you could see what kind of effects you can get there. You can add the reflection, it'll add it for both objects. So there's all kinds of things you can do. Alright. So just remember that any object that you have inside a vector layer is going to receive the global vector layer attributes that you set inside the properties window. Alright, so I'm going to delete, I made that by accident. I'm going to delete any unnecessary objects and just work with the text. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is a lot of times you want a very bold stroke around your text. So you'll notice if I go to the skate park text and right click and go to properties, you'll see stroke width, and it's red right now. So if I make this huge, you'll notice how it eats away at the inside of the text, so my fill color is getting engulfed with the red. I don't like that, right? So I want to make that go back to 5, and so once I only want to apply this effect once I have my text where I want it and how I want it exactly, because all I'm going to do to avoid that is create a duplicate layer. I'm going to move the duplicate layer below my original text. Then I'm going to expand the duplicate layer go to the text and do the same thing. Hit properties, and now I'm going to raise the stroke, and you'll see how it's not eating away at the text. And the reason being, of course, is the fact that this layer is on top. So you see vector 1 is on top of the copy, and it's preventing you from seeing the red that would normally eat away at the text. So now I've got a nice bold text with a very nice bold stroke width. So that's one way to make your text a little more striking if necessary. Okay, I'm going to delete that now. And the next thing I want to show you about text is the ability to put it on a path. And normally you want to create the path. I find it much easier to create the path and then add the text. So I've created this line now, and you'll notice it appears inside my vector layer because that's what I had selected. And I'm going to select one of these nodes. All I did was draw one line, and I have selected right now draw lines and polylines, and they should be set to connected segments. Alright, so now I'm going to select this node and make sure you see how that little start comes up where it tells me about the node, that little indicator. So make sure that lights up. Then I'm going to select it. Now I'm going to right click it. Right click the node, and then I'm going to put node type. Then I'm going to go to, let's say, curve after. So curve after the node. And then it's going to give me this little controller, which is hard to see on the screen here, I'm sure. So you see I'm just dragging it out. And now I've got a curved line. Okay, so let's just make a nice little curved line here. And I really don't like the white fill, so I'm going to go over here and just get rid of that. Okay, so now that I have this nice curved line, I can actually add text to the line. And you can add it to other shapes as well. So I can click on the line, and then I can add more skate park text to that contour. So there's lots of stuff you can do with shapes. And yeah, okay, so I don't want to see the line, so that's easy, right? The line inside that vector layer, all I have to do is click on the eyeball and it's gone. So I get to my text in the shape that I want it to follow a certain contour, but I don't have to look at the line that I created to get it to follow that. Alright, so I'm going to delete those. Okay, so next I want to show you some even better features, which if you really want to get fancy with your text, is you select the font you want, but you want to adjust it, you want to make it your own. So one way to do that is to take your text, and so I don't ruin this text, I'm going to duplicate the layer. I'm going to expand it, and I'm going to select that duplicate text, and I'm just going to hide this one so we're not looking at both. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Objects, and I'm going to select Convert Text to Curves. Now, I can select it as a single shape or character shapes. Now, when I select character shapes, it's going to create the text to be an object that I can add text to more. And that may sound complicated, so let me just show you real quick. So now I've selected again. I've selected to make it as character shapes. So once it's character shapes, I can actually click on the text. You see how that it's coming up as a path, as if I can draw on the text. So now the text is its own path that I can add even more text to. And it's following the contour of the letter, so it looks kind of silly right now. Let me make it extremely small, and maybe you can see it here. Make it just a little larger here. See how it's following? You can see the letters kind of following the inside of the letter. Text inside. You see how it's following the letter A here, and you can kind of make out the INS. So that's one thing you can do with text, is to make it its own path by again going to Objects and Convert and making it a character shape. Okay, so I want to delete that. Okay, for the next step, I'm going to duplicate my layer again. And then I'm going to hide this layer so we're only looking at it again. And now I'm going to select my text here. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before, but this time I'm going to select as a single shape. When you do that, seems like nothing happened. But what you need to do is go over to your pen tool, and you'll notice that now the text has nodes everywhere. So just like before when we created our own line and we were able to adjust the contour, now we can take these various nodes and move them around. Sorry, I missed it. And move them around and actually change the text to our liking. If we don't like where all the nodes are, we can take our cut tool here at the top and just slice, just hold the left mouse button and slice through the area you want to create a node, and then go back to the edit mode here. Take that node you just created. You'll see it created two nodes now because I cut it in half, but I can just take it immediately and join it back to the other one. See, it says join there. And then I've created a node that I can move around and alter it again. Alright, so that's what you get when you change the text to a single shape. Alright, so finally, I want to get rid of this raster layer I created just to, that I was using to hide the background. And now you're going to see the skate park background. And I'm going to do some stuff to this skate park background to make it pop a little more. So I'm going to go here, create it as a negative image, and I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to make it an overlay on top. And what I'm going to do is merge down to merge those two layers together. Okay, so now I've got the background just how I like it. And I'm going to move my text up where I want it. Oops. Sorry, I didn't have my text selected. Move my text up where I want it. Let's say there, and I do want to make sure it's aligned left and right evenly. Okay, so now, as we discussed before, you can do multiple effects inside the vector layer. You're going to go to Properties, go to Layer Styles, and let's add a reflection here. And preview on image so we can actually see it over here. So you see we've got this little reflection now. And of course you can change the size of that reflection. Just make it a little deeper, and you can change the opacity of it. That's how I like it more subdued. And that's pretty good. Alright, so next thing I want to do is duplicate this layer. I'm going to call this shadow. Okay, hit enter on that. And what I'm going to do is move the shadow underneath the original vector layer. And what I really need to do is remove that property I just created. So I'm going to go into properties of the vector layer, remove that reflection, and now I've got just a duplicate of the text without the reflection. And the next thing I want to do is just drag, while I have my pick tool selected, just drag the text and invert it. Okay, so I'm going to make it kind of big. So I've inverted that, and now I'm just going to move it up by the text, kind of close, because I'm going to create a shadow. Okay, so there, make sure it is centered horizontally. And now, when you have text selected with your pick tool, not with the perspective tool or anything like that, you're going to use the pick tool to change the perspective of the text, the shadow text. You'll notice when I hover over the node, it gives me the options to resize. And there's various ways you can resize. You can hold the control key, and that kind of creates that pyramid looking object there, and that's going to allow me to skew the text evenly on either side. As I drag to the left, it's going to widen the right as well. And also, if I hold the shift key while I'm over a node, it's going to let me just drag one corner around without altering the other. Right, so do something like that, which I don't like. So I'm going to just go back one step. And now, you'll notice because I widened the bottom area of this inverted text that it's no longer centered with the other text. So all I'm going to do is go to these nodes and hold the shift key, the control key, and just slide that in until it matches the same size. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to move this back down. Okay, that looks alright to me. And now I just want to create a shadow out of it. Okay, so before I create the shadow by desaturating it, one thing I want to show you is to select your magic wand. So you're going to select the magic wand here, and you're going to just click while you have this layer selected. Now you'll see it's selected everything outside the text, which I don't want. So what I'm going to do is go to selection, invert. Now it's selected everything inside the text. So I've got everything selected inside the text. I'm going to go to selection, load save selection, and I'm going to save the selection as to alpha channel. And that's going to temporarily save it and make it readily available to me in the future. I'm not sure exactly where I can save these. I think you could save these permanently as well. Alright, so I'm adding it to this document. You see what document it is. Hit save. And then I'm going to go up here to my palette. Click it and go to gradient. And I'm going to select this black and white gradient here. And then I'm going to go back to my shadow. And, didn't mean to left click there. I'm going to create a mask layer, or a new mask, and I want to do a show all. Okay, so when you have a mask layer, white means I'm showing everything, black means I'm showing nothing, and anything in between are variants of that. So what I want to do is paint inside. I'm going to grab my fill bucket, and inside the text I'm going to paint this gradient. So you see, if you look at my mask here, you'll see how that gradient has filled in from black at the bottom to white at the top. So that means it's showing nothing at the bottom and more and more and more as you get to the top, just like it is here in my palette. So that's going to create kind of a shadow that fades off as I as it goes deeper into the picture. So now that I've done that, I'm going to right click. Okay, and because this is again a vector layer and I'd like to keep it in case I want to make changes later on, I'm just going to duplicate it, and I'm going to hide the original. And now what I'm going to do is convert this to a raster layer. Oh, sorry. Tell you what, we'll just do it the easy way. We'll just go to adjust. And we're going to go to brightness and contrast. And it's going to tell me. It's going to convert, it's going to merge this group. I'm going to click OK. And I'm just going to turn that text with that gradient that I just created into a raster layer. Now I've got this black text here, and you can see I can change the opacity of that layer and kind of create a subtle kind of shadow for that text. Now a shadow normally isn't that edgy, so I'll go to the Adjust tab, go to Blur, Gaussian Blur, and then I have it set to 39, so we'll see how that looks. And that looks pretty good, unless you want it to be just a little more distinct. It's up to you, however you think it looks right. You can kind of make out the letters, so it looks kind of like a nice nice shadow effect. So now I've got I've got two effects going on with the vector layer, right? So we've got the vector layer with the mirror effect here, and I also have an additional layer that I've created that is now a raster layer. That's my shadow layer. Okay, and if you want to go ultra realistic, or obviously this is not ultra realistic, but if you just want to get it as real as possible, you can select your eraser tool and go to this shadow layer that is a raster layer, and just erase out some of the shadow that's actually in the pool, because it normally wouldn't bend over the edge like that. So you can kind of get rid of that, kind of give it that little more natural feel to the photo. But anyway, those are just some tips and tricks to work with text. I hope that was helpful, and I highly recommend you purchase some Corel Paint Shop Pro if you don't have it. It's a great program. Thanks a lot.